Hi class, in this video I'm going to take you how to create a solid model of your truss for your bridge project using Fusion 360. So to begin this, what we're going to go ahead and do is we want to make this model. So if you want to make any changes, it's going to be what we call parameterized, so that you can modify a couple parameters and then quickly update your design for building your bridge. So if you go into modify, there's a FX that's change parameters. You can click on that. And what we can do here is add parameters that we can define our model with. So one of the parameters that we need is the actual length of the entire bridge. So you can make a name, L could be it, or length of bridge. You can't have spaces in the name of your parameter. So I'm doing camel case here. So instead of having a space mark, you could also do an underscore, but I'm going to just do length of bridge. And make sure your units are in millimeters. So since it was supposed to be 24 centimeters, here I'm going to go 240 millimeters. You could add the descriptive comment to say this is the length of your bridge span, so this is the length of bridge span. So it's always a good idea to comment it so later on you have a good idea of what your parameter stands for. We're also going to do thickness. So let's do thickness, and this is going to be the thickness of our balsa wood member. So you should actually measure your individual measures, but one of the ones I just measured was 3.175 on average millimeters. And so this is the thickness of balsa wood. Okay. And then another parameter that may be useful for us is we had that inner clearance design criteria. And so we'll call this inner clearance. And this was supposed to be 3.5 centimeters or 35 millimeters. So, okay, so now we've got a couple good parameters by which we can define our model, but you may come up with many more, such as like you have an angle or the height of your bridge. So there are many more parameters that you could possibly use in your design. I just want to show you these, and we'll use them in my design here. So now let's talk about how to navigate or pan and orbit in Fusion 360. One thing that's useful is if you go to this folder, you see this little eye right here. That's hiding the origin. So if the eye is grayed out and has a cross through it, that means you can't see it. It's just being hidden. So if you click that, you can see your origin. But you can also specify things within the origin. Like maybe you don't want to see the XZ plane, so you can hide that. But let's view the whole origin for now. The one thing is if you click your middle mouse, you can scroll in and zoom out. So, so I can scroll in and zoom out. You also have the top over here, this home bar that can navigate, and you can click different parts of the home icon to look at different parts of your model. And you can even rotate it. And then if you click the home, it goes back to an isometric view where you're viewing the front, right, and top plane of the model. If you go under preferences, I actually recommend that you switch your preferences for navigation. So if you go under general, there's pan, zoom, and orbit shortcuts. By default, Fusion 360 has it set to Fusion, but I actually like the SolidWorks pan, zoom, and orbit a little bit better. And so what that lets you do is if you have a mouse, you can scroll in and out to zoom in and out, or if you press Shift, you can pan, and then if you just click and hold the middle mouse, you can orbit. And so you can kind of spin around your model. Now, you don't have to use these. You could just navigate fully with the home icon, but I actually like navigating with my middle mouse and then zooming in and out, and then having the, and I apologize here, it's actually for pan, that's actually if you want to move around. So here I'm dragging my origin across by hitting Control and clicking the middle mouse. So that lets you pan. You can also do that by clicking down here on the bottom toolbar. If you click pan, that gives you this little hand, and now if you just click your left mouse, you can drag the model around. And then if you click the orbit, now if you click the left, you can scroll around with your mouse. But that's kind of painful to have to go navigate here each time you want to do that. So it's much quicker if you do that just using your middle mouse. And so I prefer SolidWorks, but you may find that you like the Fusion navigation better. So now that we know how to navigate with Fusion 360, to create any solid model, the foundation of that is building sketches. So if you go underneath Design, so make sure your toolbar is set to the Design toolbar, and if you click on this sketch icon, it's going to take you into the sketching modeling environment. You can also sketch by clicking on a plane, right-clicking, and then create sketch. And we're actually going to look at the XY plane. We're going to create our sketch on the XY plane. So make sure you have the XY plane highlighted by clicking on it. And then you can either right click and select create sketch, or now you can just go up to the toolbar and say create sketch. And that takes us into the sketch tool palette up here on our top toolbar. So we have a lot of options of things to do within this sketch. One of the basic tools is the line tool. So you can just press L and that lets you make lines. So I'm going to Control Z, we'll delete it. Or you can navigate to the toolbar up here and click the line tool. So what we'll do is you want your sketch to be anchored to the origin. Every sketch should have at least a dimension. If it doesn't have to be touching the origin, but it should be what we say is constrained to the origin. And that means it's dimensionally defined, its distance to the origin. So let's go ahead and look at our front plane. So I'm navigating up here. I'm going to click on the origin, and then what you'll see is as you create the line, I have this window that's letting me type in a dimension. What I'm going to type in here is we're going to center our whole entire model about the origin. So I'm going to type length of bridge. So if you didn't get the dimension as you created the line, say I'm going to copy this equation right here. So say you accidentally didn't have this dimension when you created the line and you clicked the line down so it didn't give you the option. You can go up to top here under the toolbar, sketch dimension, or just click D, and now we can dimension this line to be our function. So I just pasted in the function, but you could retype this length of bridge minus the thickness divided by 2. So that's going to set our bridge length. So now I'm going to use the line tool to continue on. So press L. So if you press L, we can continue on creating just rough outline of what we want our sketch to look like. One thing is if you hover here, if you've got your snap enabled on your sketch palette, what I can do is I actually want to snap to this midpoint. You may not, but my model here, I'm going to snap to this midpoint, and then go ahead and click away with my lines. So if you hover over the midpoint and then you drag up, you see this dot 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 line. That's saying it's going to snap to be that dimension. Now I've snapped it to vertical. Okay, and what you see here is there's a couple things that are constrained. For example, these little gray icons here, this means it's perpendicular. So this line has been made perpendicular to this line. This line has been made perpendicular to this line. And then this little triangle here means that these have been snapped to the middle point of the line that we created that's going to define the length of our bridge. What you'll see though is there are some blue lines, and what that means is if a line is blue, it is not fully dimensionally constrained. So the first line we made is dimensionally constrained because it's constrained to the origin, and then it's also its length is fixed and it has this horizontal constraint. So we can't move this around. If you click on this point, you can't move it around. But these lines, since they're blue, they could be moved around. And so we want to have a fully defined sketch. So there's several ways to do that. You can press the dimension tool, and we could set this angle to be, say, 50 degrees. And that will now make the entire sketch black. You could also set the height. So maybe we dimension here and we set the height of this member to be, say, 50 millimeters. Now this is more than, remember, our minimum height here was supposed to be 35 millimeters. That's given by the design. So make sure you're at least 35 millimeters. But I'm going to go ahead and stick with dimensioning. So if you dimension between two non-parallel lines, cancel. So if you dimension between two non-parallel lines, you can specify an angle. So here I'll specify this as being, oh, and it's giving me an error. That's saying I've actually over-constrained this. So let's go back to 50. Okay, so let's set this back to be 50. So if you actually try to add too many dimensions, like here, this would over-constrain it. We don't actually want to over dimension it, so Fusion should give you an error if you're over constrained. So let's go ahead and delete that. So now, as soon as you've got it black, it's been fully constrained. So now I'll go ahead and finish this sketch. Oh, before we finish it, let's actually label this sketch because we're going to use this sketch to drive all of our future sketches. So if you click on the sketch, double click, you can name it the joints sketch because this sketch is going to have the location of all of our joints. Okay, and now we can finish this sketch. So now that we're out of the modeling view, or out of the sketch dialog, what we're actually going to do is create a second sketch. So if you go back up to create sketch, and then we're still going to select the XY plane. And in this sketch, what we're going to do is we're going to project the sketch that we already have sketched, this joint sketch. And it seems like extra work, but the reason why we're doing this is we don't want to update any subsequent sketches. If we do this correctly, we're only going to update the joint sketch, and then everything else should update perfectly. So go ahead and go to Create, and then under Project, include Project. Then what you should do is select all of the construction lines from your previous joint sketch. And so that's going to let us project those into this sketch. So if you hide the joint sketch by clicking the little eye icon, you see now we actually have that same sketch in there. What's so nice about this though is we go ahead and modify our bridge. So if we put this at 200, this sketch will now instantly update for us, and we don't have to make any modifications to any dimensions. We only have to change the one parameter. So let's go back to 240. Okay. And then the quickest way to make the members, and we're basically going to make solid bodies that we're going to extrude, is go ahead and under the Create, there's a tool, and it's called Offset. Oh, it's actually under Modify, and there's a tool called Offset. You can also just click O. O is the hotkey. And what we're going to do, make sure you have this chain selection selected. We're going to select a bunch of lines to offset, and it will only let you select one complete chain. So we're going to have to do this in a couple tries. But for the offset position, what we're going to do is the thickness, but divided by 2. Because remember, we want our members to be centered on their joints, so we're only going to go halfway each time. And then so you can click O again and click those same members. But in this time, what we're going to do is flip the direction, and then it's going to be thickness divided by 2. So now we've got those, but I'm going to continue. Oh, and I think I accidentally, Control-Z, I selected the wrong members. So make sure you do the outside ones. I selected the wrong one. So O for offset. And then flip the direction. No, oh, it is already by default. It was doing it right. Okay, thickness divided by 2. So you may or may not have to flip the direction. So now what I've got is around that joint sketch, I've actually created a model here of the actual thickness of the balsa wood. So let's continue on doing that for these inner members here. So we'll do thickness divided by 2, and then one more time. Thickness divided by 2. Okay. And so what we're going to do here is, now that we've got all of these offsets that represent the thickness of our members, we're not quite ready to go ahead and make a sketch yet. What we're going to do is, actually, you need to model how you're going to cut the members and splice them together to create the joints for assembling your bridge. And we don't have to trim away any of these lines to get it to look nice and pretty. All we need to do is to get it to have enclosed boundaries. So you see, if I hover over an enclosed boundary, it goes from being that orange to a blue. So that means this boundary is fully enclosed. And that's what we're going to need when we're going to go ahead and extrude. But you see here is, when I highlight around this outer boundary, better zoom in. Can't actually. Okay, so here, what you see is this outer boundary is around the entire bridge, but that isn't how we want it. We want it to be for one member. And what you can do is use the line tool to sort of complete these lines. So if I click on this, it's going to snap to vertical. So you see here, there's that little light blue right angle. I'm just going to click, and I don't even need to dimension it. So that completes this. Now, when I hover in here, I've segmented where this is going to be. So let's go ahead and even continue on making these lines. And if you click the line tool, if you click and double click, it'll let you move around. So I pressed escape, but if you click, I'm going to hover to, so here is parallel constraint, and double click, and I'm still using my line tool. And what we're going to do is, you want to actually consider how your joints are going to come together. So here's kind of a complicated spot where I'm seeing I might have some issues. You want to make it so that you have the maximum amount of surface area for a given joint. That'll give you the best bond when you're gluing it together. So there's several ways to do that. You also have to weigh in manufacturability. So if the joint to make the maximum surface area is too difficult to cut, you're not going to get a good flush joint. So you also want to weigh in, well, what is just the simplest joint to make? So I'll give you a couple options here. So one, I'll extend this one all the way down. And then let's make a bunch of lines here. Actually, one that comes to here, and then something like this. And let's do something like this, or that. And let's do this one right here. So this is way more complicated than it needs to be, but I want to show you that we have quite a few options to go ahead and build this joint. So one thing you can do is you can create a constraint if you don't get this line to snap to the right place that you want it to. So I'd actually like it to be collinear with this line up here. So if you click one line, press shift and click a second line, you can go up to your constraints and you can make it a collinear constraint. So let's see, I still haven't fixed all of these joints. So I'm going to continue on here. And let's make that fix all of them. I'm actually going to extend that line, and then let's do something like this. So it looks like a complete mess, but what we'll see is we have multiple options to create this. So I'll show you. I just want to give us different options on how we're going to model this. Now this doesn't have to be pretty, but you can play with how you've drawn these lines to actually make different kinds of joints. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this sketch. And now what we can do is begin to extrude to create actual members. So, and actually now that I'm looking at this, I don't quite like it, but we'll come back and fix that at some point. So if you go to the create icon, you can go to extrude. You also see the E, so if you press E, that lets you create an extrude to create a solid surface. So if we go to extrude, you can highlight and you can extrude multiple areas. So what I'm going to do is just start with extruding this bottom member here and click all of the regions that I think I'd like to extrude. So this first time, I'm going to do something that looks like this. Okay, and what we're going to do is extrude it the thickness. And we're going to create a new body. So now what we have, well, that doesn't look right. So let's go to extrude. You can always edit and extrude, edit feature, and I accidentally extruded the length of bridge. So let's go the thickness. That looks better. So now we have a solid model of one of the members that we'd like to extrude. What you'll notice is that the sketch went away, but we still need to extrude other members. So if you click the eye icon, you can unhide that sketch because we still need it. And so I'm going to press E to extrude again. Now I'm going to extrude this member right here. So I'm going to zoom in on all the little regions. And let's do that. Okay, and what we're going to do here is extrude the thickness, and we're going to make a new body. So make sure the operation, by default, if it has any intersection with another body that's been already created, by default, Fusion is going to join them, merge and join them together, but we want to make a new body. So make sure you've got your operation set to new body. And so now I've got two members of my bridge, and I'm going to continue on extruding these members. So if you clicked another part that you didn't want, you just click back in there and it will unhighlight from the blue. That looks pretty good, and I'll create this for my thickness. And make sure you've got it selected to new body. And then I'm going to extrude again. Distance will be thickness. And I'm going to set it to new body. And I'm going to extrude a couple more. Oh. And so you can scroll ahead if you think you get this in the video. I'm just going to continue on extruding away. So if you already understand what's going on, I would say move ahead a couple of minutes. Make sure on each of these operations you're going to create new bodies. And we've got only one more to or two more to extrude. And then here, let's do the distance with the thickness. And create a new body. On this last one, this is a little bit important here, is we're not going to actually extrude. So let's go ahead and look at this from the front. We're not going to extrude the full thing. We're actually, because we're only doing modeling half of the bridge, because we're going to utilize the fact that our bridge has symmetry, what you want to do is actually only extrude half of this member. So let's go to extrude, but we're not going to select anything to the left of this line. So go ahead and take these little slivers. And go ahead and extrude this the thickness. and then create a new body. And so what you'll see here, now I can hide my sketch, is what we have is a nice solid 3D model of what our bridge should look like. And now you can see what these joints are coming here to look like. So here it looks like a pretty good amount of surface area that I've maximized, as well as they're pretty easy to manufacture. But you have plenty of options on how you could make your joints. So now that we've modeled half of our bridge, what we're going to take advantage is the fact that our bridge should be symmetric, and we're going to use a mirror operation to create the other half of our bridge. So if you go under Modify, there should be, and it'll actually be Create, here is Mirror. Yeah, so it's under the Create option. We're going to go ahead and create a mirror, and so it wants us to select the pattern type. So what we're going to mirror is the actual body. So click Bodies, and then you can actually go to your bodies and then just click all of the bodies that we made here, or you can actually click them in the actual, click on the actual model yourself. And then once you've clicked all of the members that you created, you need to select a plane to mirror that. So click the plane option and select, we're going to select the YZ plane and go ahead and create OK. And so now what we've done is we've created a mirror, and now we have the full bridge, which is why we didn't model the entire joint in the member in the middle. But to fuse these two members, because they should be one solid member, you go to Modify, and we're going to use the Combine tool. So click Combine, and then what we're going to do is click this body, and we're going to combine them into one new body. So now we have a new body. And so what's so nice about this is that you could go back to this original joint sketch. You can edit this. And let's just say we did some calculations and we decided, you know what, this is going to be a lot stronger if this was actually only 45 degrees. And now the entire model will update for you. So you don't have to go in and redo all these sketches and redo all of the extrudes. I've actually got a complete new design because we've made this what's called parameterized. So now that we've made our sketch of the joints and the members, and we've extruded to create a solid model of our frame, what we need to do is sketch and extrude the cross members that are going to connect this half side of the truss to the other half side. So let's go ahead and create another sketch, and we'll also create this on the XY plane. One thing that may help to do is we don't want to see all these bodies right now, so let's just hide all of the bodies. Okay, and in this, what we're going to use is the rectangle tool. So under Create, we're going to use the rectangle, but let's go ahead and use the center rectangle. So create a rectangle. And we're going to dimension that to be the thickness. And what you could do is you could dimension the other side, or you can say that this has to be equal to that side. And so now we've got this rectangle. We still want your joint, so if your joint sketch was hidden, turn on your joints sketch. And what we're going to do here is create a copy for every cross member. So we're going to add cross members to all of these joints. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cross members. So you can actually, instead of recopying this or pasting it, what we can do is you could create a pattern. So if you do, or actually let's just copy it. So Control C, click Control V, and you can just move it. Okay, and let's create a couple more copies. And let's move them so that they don't actually overlap on top of each other. So paste it. So I need one more copy. And okay, so now I've got 5 copies of these, and it's blue. Even though the size is constrained, we haven't actually constrained them to the origin. What we actually want to do is place these exactly on our joints. So go ahead and create a coincident constraint with the previous sketch. So you can actually click on the joint from our joint sketch, and then now what we're going to do is coincident. And so click on the midpoint of the rectangle, click on a joint, and make them coincident. And there's two more. To do. So click away. Okay, so now we've actually placed sketches for all of our cross members in the right spot. And let's actually go ahead and unhide our bodies. And this actually might be a good idea to hide the bodies just for a second. What we're going to do is extrude. Now you can select all of those sketches, or all those rectangles that you just created. Let's see here. And what we're going to do is extrude it. The distance will be the inner clearance. So what you see here is it's highlighted as red, and the operation is select to cut. And what actually has happened is it's slicing away the solid model that we've actually created. We don't want to go through our member. So if you flip the direction, what we're going to do is go the other direction. So go minus inner clearance. So if you type in minus inner clearance, it'll go the other way. And we still don't want to have this operation set to join. You want to select new body. Okay, because we don't want to merge any of the other bodies that we had before. So now we've got a nice sketch. Let's take a look at the bottom, or solid model of our cross members, but it's only for half of the frame. So we're going to use that mirror operation that we did before we mirrored. So go under create a mirror, and let's select the members that are not along the middle axis, because we don't want to double create these guys. So go ahead and select our mirror plane. That's going to be the YZ plane again, and mirror. And so now we've got all of the members. And there's actually only one thing we need to mirror again, and that is this part of our frame. We want to duplicate it onto the other side to create a full 3D model. So what we're actually going to do is create a construction plane to mirror about. So if you go to construction plane, what we're going to do is create a mid plane. And what you can use for that is one of these members that we've already just extruded. So click on either ends of the member. And what that does is create a plane that bisects those cross members. Now that we have this bisecting plane, we can use it to mirror the side of our truss across this plane. So you can go back to create mirror, and now we can select each member of this truss. If you accidentally select a cross member, just click it again to unselect it. And we'll go through and select all of our members. So zoom out to make sure you've got them all. So you've got all the members, and then click the mirror plane and select that mirror plane that we just created as a construction plane. And so now we have a full and complete 3D CAD model of our truss that we would like to build. One thing that's nice to know when you have your model is how it's going to measure up. So let's double confirm that we're actually meeting the requirements. So if you go to this inspect and measure, what you can do is click on your cross members, and you can measure the distance. And this is actually the correct span. So you see here, it's 240 millimeters. You can also measure, so you go restart selection, that inner distance between the two frames. So let's make sure we have at least 35 millimeters. And we do, because we did that by design. And you can also measure the height from the bottom member to the inner height of any top or any lowest top member. So if you have a lower top member, maybe you have a joint somewhere in the middle of your bridge, you need to measure to that, because that is what's going to limit how high or how much clearance you have. So click from here to here, and we've actually got 67 millimeters. So we easily exceed our design criteria of having at least 35 millimeters of clearance. So once we have our solid model, what we'd like to create is a draft or a drawing of this model so that we can use it to create a template by which we can cut out our members. So if you go to drawing from design, and we better save this, so this might be my Pratt bridge model, save that bridge, and then go ahead and do create new from scratch. But what we're going to do is the standard, change it to ASME. So this is the American Society of Mechanical Engineers standard. The units should still be in millimeters, but change the sheet size to be a size that we're going to print. So let's print it as an 11 by 8.5. So go ahead and click OK. And that's going to take us into the modeling or to the drafting environment for Fusion 360. So now that we're in here in this environment, what we want to do is we want to make sure the scale is a 1-to-1 scale, because we want this to be exactly the same as our bridge should be drawn as we're going to cut it. So we need to make sure that this is a 1-to-1 scale. So go ahead and place the base view and then click OK. And then what we don't actually need this header here. Now, sometimes on engineering drawings, you'll see a nice title block here that has both the drafter and as well as any tolerances that should be specified. But for this, we don't actually need that, so you can just delete that. But what we're going to go ahead and do is create another drawing view. So let's create a projected view. So click the parent view, and if you drag down, you can click and place and press enter. And what this is this is now a view of the bottom of the bridge. And this is the second view we need, because we want the top view so that we could use this to cut out the members. And we also want the bottom view so we know where the cross members are going to be placed. So go ahead, and now you could save this as your drawing. And then now what you can do is output as a PDF, and you could save that as a PDF. And let's open that up once we get it. So let's go ahead and save it. And now you have a PDF with an exact template of all the members that you're going to need to make for your design.